Welcome back, venturers. It's time for another discussion about VNs. I am Emar, and together with Tauros, we bring today a very boyish topic. Or maybe the least girlish girl topic? Wait, I got it. It's somewhat boyish, but in a girly way, not too much. We present you Tomboys. Okay, Tauros, so tell us what makes this strange creature.
Strange creature, gosh. Okay. First off, a tomboy is an interesting and somewhat difficult term to actually define. It's one of those terms that tend to be common in some of these anime works where we all have some sort of rough idea of maybe what the stereotypical tomboy looks like, but once you start getting into the weeds and start thinking about any variation from the stereotype, it gets a lot more vague and indistinguishable of how much it really entails being a tomboy. But let's see. Our good old site Wikipedia says that a tomboy is a girl or young woman who generally expresses masculine traits. And that in itself is a pretty open-ended definition. Because, I mean, there's a lot of, typically masculine traits. Like, would you say the physical traits of like having tan skin or short brown hair? Would you say it's like masculine personality traits, such as being brash, independent, maybe easily angered, quick to slapstick or some physical comedy? Would you say it's like having typically masculine hobbies, such as sports, video games, or skateboarding, or other athletic activities? I think there's a lot to it, and I think we can all agree that there's the typical idea of a tomboy, of, a chick who's tan skin, with short hair, who's in some sort of athletics, who has very much a bro personality that's best friends with our main character. That kind of, vibe to it. But there's still a lot more that can be smudged around the edges that really make you question how far a tomboy label goes, right, Amar?
Oh yeah, definitely. When you started listing off a typical tomboy from a insert generic VN Moega, and you started with the characteristic of how that character is presented, how she looks, but I think the tomboy is almost exclusively a behavioral archetype. Now, whether or not it manifests in such a way from the design or maybe how she looks, okay, fine. But I still feel like it's the behavior of having that nonchalant approach to boys, like a bro, but not necessarily a boy kind of deal. Like, that kind of playfulness and not necessarily shy around the other sex. This is probably the closest I try to formulate the opinion of that. So maybe a lack of self-awareness of being a member of the opposite gender, right? That's the closest I can come up with when it comes to definition.
To a certain degree, I guess, but then you get stuff like Momo from, what's it called, Magikoi, who's very strong and powerful, and is very, I guess, charming in a boyish way, but I don't think if I would go so far as to say she's a tomboy. It's more of I'm not really sure if there would be any sort of label to slap on her. I guess you could try saying like an older sister type, but that's just more of a maturity thing rather than just single-handedly just being the lack of, awareness of own sex. I think there's more to it than that. And although I think you were starting to get onto an interesting point there of saying how it's a female character with the bro energy of like
maybe that's actually good way to approach it, yeah.
The idea of being very like one of the boys, of being very easy to talk to, or having the similar masculine hobbies like you mentioned, right?
Maybe even it comes down to the fact that that kind of character doesn't treat herself as a girl. And this is how she gets that guy energy, so to speak.
Although in that case, then, because one of the things I was thinking about with that definition of being, very expressing masculine traits, is that to a certain degree, how far does it go where it's simply, just the lack of showing, feminine, girly traits? Because, to a certain degree, you could also think that that's also the very stereotypical of someone being a girly girl with, frilly clothes and a very sugary, sweet personality and a high-pitched voice. And, if you just think, if you go the opposite of that, does that turn it into just tomboy characteristics? And I'm not entirely sure if I agree. I think a lot of it does go more so in the personality of being, quite independent, cheerful, and on the physical side of things. I think that's the biggest distinguishing aspects of me for determining if a character is a tomboy type or not. I think your Raging Loop has a pretty good example of Chiemi, of, I guess you could say the main heroine of that, who is quite independent in Raging Loop, even though a lot of Raging Loop takes place in, a pretty small village out in the countryside. She's one of the most independent ones out there who's has a lot more contact with the outside world than the rest of the villagers. She also lives on her own. She drinks a lot. She owns guns as well. All of that make her, a lot more independent and a lot more, I guess, brash than you would typically see out of other characters. And in fact, that's more so than you would typically see out of a lot of other VN heroines. And I think that's a lot of what drives her to be seen as a tomboy.
God damn it, you brought a point of brashness and some sort of openness that I really, how can I say, associate with tomboys, specific an example straight from Bald Sky. Because Bald Sky is a very interesting case in which it has two tomboy characters. So tomboys, enjoyers are eating good in that title. Okay?
Okay.
And there are two distinct characters. Both, I would say, have that brashness to them, but in different ways. One of them have that masculine energy of being one of the bros, and quite literally is part of the trio between protagonist, his best friend, and she's the third in that group. Tak? And it's not until you have an opportunity to go and explore her route that she shows her shy side. The girliness is brought forth. For the longest time, she doesn't really treat herself any special, like in a girly way. So her brashness, her openness, and to some degree airheadedness even shines through. And the second tomboy is someone who is tomboy by juxtaposition with her own sister. You have a sister that is reserved, very shy, very recluse, and very freely, like when you were describing a girly, sweet characteristic of a typical girl. And she, on the other hand, is nothing like that, her sister. And by that juxtaposition, if you put them next to each other, like, okay, I don't know how to describe a tomboy, but I know when I see one. By the comparison between those two.
Mm-hmm.
And again, out of those two, it oftentimes is a recurring event in which one steps out of a bound what is, let's say, appropriate for a girl approaching a guy in a situation, and then her sister tries to, hey, don't do it. It's like so unladylike. And it shows a lack of common sense and maybe airheadedness in the older sister, what the younger sister doesn't have. She is very cautious about those things. Like, that's actually very cute. By juxtaposition, you see one is more boyish and the other is definitely more girly. Like, okay, I get where this is going. Okay, that's cute.
Yeah, the foil between two characters, especially as sisters. Because I'm assuming a lot else a lot of other aspects of them are very similar, considering they're sisters, right?
Some of them are different, obviously.
Yeah, of course. I'm not saying they're exactly the same. It's just that they have the similarities between themselves that make those different approaches, those different personalities, but shine even brighter.
I would say they are more different than similar, because one is a case of borderline kudera or a shy recluse, and Tomboy is more of a outgoing people person.
Yeah, I'm not saying they're similar. I'm just saying they have, similar aspects.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But yeah, and then I know Baldur's Sky isn't exactly a typical route structure or whatnot, but does the story emphasize one of them more than the other? Or I know you mentioned how they're, how they approach different scenes. If oh, that's not ladylike, you need. But I mean, as far as the overarching plot, is there much more to how they interact with the bigger picture, or how one of the story might treat one of them differently?
I'll be very careful how to answer that.
Oh dear, spoilers.
I'll say very carefully. Yes, they treat it differently. Baldur's Sky has enough of the flashback sequences then you can experience the peaceful life that gives you the context I just brought up. Because to give a little bit context of Baldur's Sky is a title in which, from the perspective of protagonist, you try to reassemble your memory, being thrust into this world in a very peculiar situation that is going on, and you need to uncover what is happening. And over the course of the story, you are collecting fragmented memory and piece together both your own life, the protagonist, as well as what is the current state of the world. The interactions of those two sisters are the most prominent in the reminisce mode of flashbacks, etc. As how the story treats them, I think this is too much of a spoiler territory to delve into.
Okay. But still, that is an interesting approach. That seems like a good use of the story involving Tomboy character.
Yeah, I agree.
Speaking of which, one Tomboy character I really felt was really aided by the story was Josette, our main character of Dead End Junction. It's an indie visual novel, more in a comic book style, about a fantasy wild west. Gunslingers and dusty old settlements, but also with some fantasy magic involved. And she is a tomboyish character, energetic, longing for adventure, dreaming of becoming a legend in a sleepy little town. And she gets swept up in an adventure, traveling across the lands, searching for her father. And I think that kind of character journey really helps when she's the kind of tomboy character that's out searching for the adventure after all. And it really helps her drive the story forward, and it really gives a lot of variety to the various scenes that she encounters throughout the story, whether they're emotional or action-packed or more on the peaceful side of things. I think those all bounce well off of her. She's a very good main character to have for this kind of story. especially for her, growth and her dreams of becoming a legend.
Would that kind of setting the Wild Wild West mean that a tomboy in that setting would be a cowboyish behavior?
Cowboyish? Is that what you said?
Yes, cowboyish.
Cowboyish. Yeah. In a sense, yeah, it might be a little more thematically appropriate.
Huh.
But yeah, it was a very cool story, and I think her, Josette, being the main character, was a huge part of it. I won't go so far as to say, oh, she carried the VN, because the VN was good in several other aspects too. But yeah, I mean,
Okay.
She was a great big driving force of it, and I liked it.
Oh, but the way you spoke about that character brings up an interesting question to me. Which VN, in your opinion, was carried by a tomboy?
Carried by a tomboy? Oh gosh, I don't know if I know anything that far. What?
In
gosh.
Your mind. I mean, we can define even carried by the fact that your favorite character was the tomboy of that title.
Yeah, I think I was about to say, because I think this depends if you count her as a tomboy, but Kazuko from Machikoi, who was one of the heroines, and see, that's where it gets a little debatable of how much you can say she's a tomboy versus like a Genki girl sort of thing. Because there's overlap between the two, and there's also overlap between Wanko herself in Machikoi. Because she's one of the most energetic of the whole crew, and some would say maybe even a little immature as she goes along with all of the silly antics. She's like one of the most earnest, and she practices hard, and she has big dreams that she's ruthlessly trying to chase down. And so a lot of it is just, who she is as a character versus, what you would typically think of a Genki girl versus, some aspects of what you would call a tomboy. And it gets a little complicated to try and think of if she's a tomboy and how much of that ties into just her being herself versus her having those typically masculine traits versus her just also being her own character as the character plot, molds her in certain directions. So, I mean, she was my favorite. She was my favorite of Machikoi. That was great. I'm not going to say she carried it because Machikoi is freaking amazing and it has so many awesome parts. But I mean, she's definitely the standout, right? Yeah.
Because I like your example that you brought up. Earnest, energetic, and has that Genki energy. Because for me, I have a very, very, very similar example of a favorite character from that title that is a tomboy, at least according to VNDB, but I think I would agree. It's from Monster Gear Quest. One of the recruitable characters over the journey is a spirit living in the forest, a fairy of wind power, Sylph. And she's absolutely hilarious, and I love every single moment she's on the screen. Because unlike a lot of characters that take the threat seriously and have a very serious demeanor, put trials for the protagonist all the time, she's super goofy all the time, very energetic, like a kind of wind spirit free is. Not necessarily associated with sports, like we spoke before with Tomboys, but she's like a free-spirited fairy that likes to play pranks and just be silly all the time. And it was every single time I've seen her on the screen, I laughed my ass off.
And exactly, that's where some of the
antics.
Yeah, that's where some of the overlap comes in, because how much of it is her, would you say that she's a comic relief character versus, being a tomboy? Because there's overlap, right?
She was quite often the butt of the joke, like a typical class clown is, right? But I wouldn't say she's necessarily comic relief for the sole purposes of only doing jokes. She had that energy of moral support to her that could lift spirits of other people on the journey. So I wouldn't discount completely that character by saying, oh, her only purpose is to make jokes and get buried in sand when other people are sick of her antics. No, there's more to that character.
Yeah, and that's
Although
not to say...
her defining trait was stealing hats from other people and then running away. Okay, fine.
That's not to say that a comic relief character's only purpose is to be the butt of jokes and to make the reader laugh like a clown. It's just that's a very important purpose they have, and they can, and in fact, my opinion, they should have more to them than just being a comedian in the story. But anyways,
I definitely like comic relief characters that have more to do with the story than just make a one-off joke and then disappear. See you in the 7 hours. Again, that was a very interesting example when we were preparing for Tomboys, and I was looking for examples, and I had not the easiest time choosing the characters I liked. Let's say like that. I saw Sylph from Monster Girl Quest. I'm like, wait a moment, hold up. This actually might be it. This might be it.
Here we go.
For example, Muramasa. Muramasa has a very interesting tomboyish character that is all about fighting, all about justice. She is very serious about it, but has that tomboyish charm to her and demeanor. Doesn't really treat herself as a lady, has that boyish approach to conversation and confrontation. But ultimately, it's not the top my favorite, okay? So she didn't win that. And that's a common case when looking through all those tomboy characters that I have experienced in VNs, that they often don't land in my favorites. They can be high, but likely do not get the top spot, except for Monster Girl Quest. I think that's probably the only one. Another example I had when preparing for this episode, I saw that by VNDB, they deemed Azuki from Nekopara a tomboy as well. This one is an example I'm not quite sure if I agree with. If so, then that one is also one of my favorites, so because probably is one I like the most from Nekopara. But I would not say she is defined by her tomboyishness, or at least that's not the trait I like her the most for. I think her tsundere-ness is more important and more fun.
Oh. Tsundere-ish. Do you think it's possible for Tomboy to have any tsundere capabilities?
Oh, now you talk about hybrids, okay.
I don't think so. I think those are a little too diametrically opposed.
Oh, you mean tsundere-like behavior, yet not being a tsundere and being a tomboy?
Yeah, or any mix. I know we've said before how there's been a little bit of, overlap between some of the characters that we've just been talking about, with how much they blend into other.
Fair enough.
Do you think that's possible to happen with the tomboy and tsundere personalities?
I'd say so, although those two archetypes are heavily defined by behavior, rather than, for example, emotos are by relation to the protagonist and or the characters. I think that, I think there's opportunity there. And if VNDB is to be trusted, one of those opportunities is in Nekopara.
We would never object to VNDB.
Yeah, sure, the one and only source of truth in the world, VNDB.
All right. Okay, but do you think there's ever been, well, out of any of the VNs you've read, has there ever been a waste of a tomboy character? I know we've been talking about like highlights and the ones we liked. What about one we didn't like? One tomboy that got done dirty.
I mean, this is funny example, because when I was studying tomboys from titles I've read, I saw a high density of tomboys in a trample on Shatten. And it's actually interesting because this is a superhero Power Ranger-like fighting VN. So it makes sense that if there's a lot of sport-like combat and martial arts, maybe there's a high density of tomboys. And of which there is one tomboy, a kind of rival to the protagonist, that is severely underutilized. So I think it meets the criteria of being a waste. I just didn't like her, so maybe don't do anything more with her, okay?
Oh,
so,
harsh. Just didn't
but
like
I think
her.
it was one of those rivals I'm sighing every time she appears on the screen, like, again, you.
Oh, my poor heart. How could you? You're so mean.
Yeah, all right. Let's get it over with.
Oh my god, MR. You monster.
This again, ugh. There were so many more interesting characters than just random rival out of nowhere.
In my case...
Does not get my seal of approval. Does not.
That hurts. In my case, I would pick
Go ahead.
Miki from Katawa Shoujo. She showed up once, or maybe once, a few times sporadically. She was a track team member. The one, I think she had an amputated hand. And she had her own sprite. And it was just for one little scene. And she popped up a few times in the background when like Emmy was racing. And that was it. I was like, whoa, who is she? I thought, okay, wow, Katawa Shoujo, a great title who's really showing a lot of, giving plenty of attention to all the characters and, you know, really making them fleshed out and doing them justice. And oh, here's one of his other classmates here. Oh man, okay, I'd like to see more of her. And that's it. She's just an ascended background character who got her own sprite just to show it off in one nothing little conversation, and then the story just moved on. I was like, what the hell?
Yeah, but... okay, but at which basis you want more? Just because she had a sprite and talked to a protag one time?
I was like, what do you mean just because she had a sprite? An artist does, you know, the artist on the dev team doesn't just wake up one morning and say, oops, I accidentally drew a great character design and a great sprite. That stuff takes time. That's dedication. There's got to be like some sort of plan from the dev team to move forward with this. And then it's just, oh,
and I appreciate that. Go and look at Mavlov and go back to me and tell me about wasted characters there. A lot have sprites, and even some of them have participated in the best arc of Mavlov, like Kashiwagi Haruko, the blue-haired one. She was a part of lacrosse team, and everybody loved that arc, right? So why didn't she got a route herself, huh?
Yeah, that was pretty crazy. She was kind of a hanger-on for that.
That was hilarious.
Hilarious? What?
Like, she joined that lacrosse team out of nowhere. She was important for that arc and then peaced out.
Hey, yeah.
Like, what?
Anyways, yeah, that's pretty much what happened with Miki here in Katawa Shoujo. I don't know what the heck happened there, what the excuse possibly could have been, but that was so cruel to just tease the school character and to get my hopes up and never deliver.
You need to write a very angry letter, okay?
You know, if this was like 10 years ago, I would have typed a very passionate post on Twitter or Reddit or whatever, Facebook at the time. Yeah, there we go. It would have been like justice
sure.
for Mika, and we would have gotten like one post that would have been flooded out in all of the other Katwa Shoujo messages.
Okay, next time they will just not draw a sprite just for you, so they don't have to deal with Taurus's spamming.
Gosh. Oh well. Maybe someday, as I huff copium. Anyway, I guess on one little closing note. Way back in the day, when we had a tier list of all sorts of character archetypes with August.
Oh god.
We had a tier list. Yeah, and Tomboys were on the list. And we're all pretty much in agreement that they went on B tier. How you and August especially liked them, but didn't have anything really outstanding to say about them or any special attention. In the years since then... Oh, what? Yeah?
You said we like them. I think the way we approached that was, okay, I don't have anything else to add. I guess we'll believe Taurus' opinion. That's how it went.
No, it wasn't. It was okay. I was the only one who provided any details or thought behind it. I described how that's really cool that they're very
you're
typical.
The tomboy expert, okay?
Not get out of here. Not even close. they have more varied activities and interests than the typical moe heroine. So it led to more variety in visual novels, and you get more diversity and the cool things that can be happening in the story and stuff. And I was like, yeah, that's why I generally like them. It's B tier. And you guys were like, oh yeah, sounds cool, B tier.
See, you had so many different words to describe tomboys, and my opinion is, yeah, they are like girls but boys or something. And that's it.
Gosh.
See, you're the expert here.
Has your opinion changed since then? Like them more or like them less?
Since that episode, I think I've experienced some tomboy characters I really appreciate. For example, I really like Menad Shinsei from Rounds 01, probably my favorite tomboy in that title, but her problem in Rounds that is huge competition, okay? You are not going top 3, okay? There's so many awesome characters. You were so late to the party, sorry, Menad, but you're awesome still.
Aww.
Did my opinion change? Honestly, when I think about the tomboys, specifically the list of the characters I remember and trying to decide who I like, a lot of them I like not necessarily for the tomboy aspect. They had something else going on that I really enjoy. So for example, Sylph from Monster Girl Quest being the moral support of the team, and even in the darkest hour could lift up the spirit with her goofiness. And they never got depressed enough to end the journey. I'm like, okay, that's kind of something I really appreciate in those kind of characters that try to bring up the mood. So to me, tomboyness isn't necessarily the selling point, but isn't necessarily also something negative. So I'm still remaining neutral on that.
Well, okay. I mean, I'd say a B tier is higher than neutral. That's pretty good, actually. But all right.
Then again, we put Kudera in B, which is sacrilege, okay?
Okay. Anyways, I think I'm in the same boat. I still have that same appreciation, but it hasn't really gone up or down in the meantime. So that's still a good spot. I still like tomboy characters in visual novels.
I feel like it has its place, and I definitely appreciate the juxtaposition like I brought with the sisters from Bald Sky. I think this kind of comparison between those two wildly different approaches really works. And I like that.
All right. Very cool. Very cool. Then that's as good a note to end it on as any. So thank you all very much for listening. I hope you all enjoyed it, and let us know your thoughts on Tomboys or who your favorite Tomboy characters are in visual novels. Thank you all very much.
Exactly. Thanks to all our listeners, and please tell us your favorite tomboys. The Tomboy Express Tauros will judge them. VNture out.
VNture out.